Hello friends, welcome back to Beyond the News. I'm Jim Grant, I'm your host. We've had a little summer break. I usually pre-record the shows, and there's a few that I'd had stored up in the bank, and they went out sporadically over August, which was nice. And now we're back into September. I'm recording this on the first day in September, and this show will be going out, I believe, on Wednesday, 2nd of September, so there'll be a couple of days delay on this. Thank you very much for sticking with us. We usually have quite a spike in listenings just as we run into the summer, which is unusual with all the hot weather. I'd usually think people were outside rather than listening to me moaning and whinging about the state of the world, but perhaps they want to hear solutions, because that's what we're here at Beyond the News. We're here for people of all races, religions, colours, creeds, sexual orientations that want truth, justice, and a return to common sense, and a return to our public servants being reminded that they are our servants and not our masters. So coming up on today's show, we're going to be looking at some news articles, a couple of videos, and we've got a guest. Finally, regular listeners will know that I've been trying to get Christian Riley on the show for a number of months now, and he's been trying to come on the show for a number of months now, but our scheduling has never really worked out to simultaneously coincide with a free half an hour, but it has tonight. So he's going to be talking on the victory, really, that people in our, for want of a better word, truth movement as regards financial truth. I haven't really summed that up very well, have I? But the idea that money is, the vast majority of money is printed out of nothing and then interest is added on top. That I've played on the show the article from the Bank of England that came out in March and said, yep, those so-called financial conspiracy theories are absolutely correct. The financial system is not what you think it is. It's not based on deposits and then lent back. There is well, we've played that article on the show, but I'll bring it up when we talk to Christian. I'm certain that he'll perhaps have things he'd like to talk about as well. So that's our guest, and our videos will be coming up looking at... This show's really sort of a catch-up from what the things that have been going on over the month of August or late July, the time since I've last come in the studio and recorded. It's often the way that I've found that news that was topical maybe a couple of months or a couple of years ago, as you've known that from listening to this show, then becomes re-topical in about 2 years as the news becomes mainstream. So we discuss it here on the show here. And when I say mainstream, I'm always reporting from mainstream articles such as The Guardian and Telegraph, but you'd be amazed at what is admitted in the online versions of the major publications. There's some online writers that do a wonderful job, and I've had a chance to meet some of them. But writers like Charlie Skelton from The Guardian, who I met at the Bilderberg Protest Fringe Festival last year. And then, but it's not really put into print, and it's not put on the television, the hypnotic box. And then it sort of stirs around the internet, and people can see, oh, we're quoting sources from the Telegraph and The Guardian. Wow, this is actually real. Why isn't this on the television? Why isn't this in print? Why isn't this dinner table topics? And the answer is it's not meant to be. That there are some really good journalists out there that break this information, and it's obviously true, and they've done their research, and it's so big. And speaking to some of these journalists, they can't believe that it's not bigger news that they've put it out there. Oh, that was a little pop. Let's turn that microphone down a little bit. But it is. And then it goes around the internet, and people look at it and think, well, that's clearly not a conspiracy theory. That comes from Telegraph and The Guardian. And they get talking about it, and then it becomes within, 6 months to 2 years. Then it starts to really break on the television and the mainstream news, because it can't be held back anymore. And that's due to... I usually find the news, that the breaking of controversial news usually goes out on the sites like InfoWars, David Icke, and there's some stuff on there that I don't agree with necessarily, but there's some good stuff on there that is excellent journalism, really based in truth, and people can't believe it, so the mainstream journalists pick it up, look into it, and run with the ball, and then it goes online, and then it goes around the internet, and then it goes on to the print, and then onto the television. That tends to be the sort of realm there we go, and I tend to pick it up the moment the ball's handed from the Ikes and the Alex Joneses to the Telegraph and the Guardians and the Mail online and things like that. That's where I tend to pick it up here on this show. That's how I determine what comes on the show. Can it be sourced from a mainstream source that people... If you are telling them unbelievable information, I believe they will need a source they believe in to bring that round, to bring them out of their way of thinking. And that's really what happened with the financial system. And we'll talk about that with Christian Riley later on. But so we've got covering on the Freudian slip there, covering the strikes that went on in the firefighters and things in the UK in the summer, and the BBC's coverage of Gaza that was heavily criticised. I'm not taking sides in that whole thing. I mean, I take the sides that it would be really nice not to see any innocent people blown up at all, regardless of, whoever, wherever, whatever they are. I'd really like not to see innocent people killed. That's the sort of side that I come from. But it's interesting to note that the BBC's coverage has come under a lot of criticism, and that's another thing I like to do on this show, to point out that the television and the last leg of that journey I described in how the news breaks into the mainstream could, if it wanted to, come online. It could come online when it goes online, but they choose not to, and people are starting to figure that out. And the news system can't really be controlled with the internet, unless, of course, you control the internet. But that's for another show. So here's the articles that we'll be covering today. Mail Online. This is Time Bomb at Elm Guesthouse. Pop stars, a bishop, a top politician appear on a list seized by police investigating child abuse at a London hotel in the 1980s. And that's 2nd of February 2013. But like I said, it's interesting to see how this stuff pops back up about a year later, when this stuff's announced, nothing's done, and then it goes around the line, and it sort of gets spread around the internet, and people really start to do things about it. Then we've got an article from The Guardian. UK's lowest paid employees to be classed as not working enough. Then we've got an article from The Independent. Now this is something, this is a really good example of how a news story begins to really break, because this is big to a number of people all over the world. Scientists reveal how THC, found in cannabis, could slow cancer tumour growth. Now that's obviously, people have been looking, people have been doing marathons and walks and things to help fund the cancer research charities. And there are some good charities out there that do some wonderful work. And everyone that runs in those marathons and walks has their heart in the right place, and all power to them. Good for them. But this is an interesting example of how, for a number of years, I've wanted to cover this on the show, these kinds of research, but it hasn't really cropped up in any of the mainstream articles. It's cropped up a lot on what we would call the alternative media. And or it actually started to sort of pop up on a lot of sites that have a bit of, well, I wouldn't say I trust all their information 100%. And then it started to pop up on sites like InfoWars, and whatever you think of Mr. Jones, he does do his research, and he didn't cover this for a number of years, and then I think probably for the same reasons that I did, not to cover it. And then you start to get some really credible university studies, some really credible doctors saying, look, if you want to look for the cure for cancer, you should probably be looking at this type of plant, and that plant is cannabis. And then, lo and behold, The Independent covered it on Monday the 14th of July 2014. And, of course, you can't tell me people in the pharmaceutical industries wouldn't have heard the sort of stuff that was flowing around those sort of circles 10 years ago. Well, I'm exaggerating, 5 years ago at least. There was a lot of people. Then you got, I think one of the key things was you had marijuana legalized in some states in America. I can't recall off the top of my head with accuracy what ones they are. I think maybe one of them was Colorado. And you started to, all these people that have been doing it illegally as a cure for cancer started to set up legal and lawful cancer treatment centres using cannabis. And it sort of blew into the mainstream because you couldn't deny it anymore. You had people with children who were classed as terminal, and they had great results. You can probably go on the internet and find a number of results. I mean, I've never met these people. I wouldn't be able to tell you they're telling the truth, but there were so many of them, and they seemed so legit that I thought there was something in it, but there wasn't a mainstream source to really quote, and I like mainstream sources to quote on this show. And then it's now been picked up by the mainstream. So, but you can't tell me the pharmaceutical industry hadn't really wanted to go down this road. So you're left with the situation of these pharmaceutical industries were looking at treatments that they knew wouldn't be as effective as cannabis, and they're making 160 billion a year out of it. And the alternative treatment could be grown in someone's own home for free, and you're left with a certain conclusion as to why maybe they didn't go down that road. You're not. And certainly there was, perhaps I should do a whole show, really, or at least a whole segment on this. There's a lot of it. I will do a whole segment, I think, at some point. But anyway, scientists reveal how THC found in cannabis could slow tumour growth. That's an article. I'm out of practice, aren't I? I used to go really through the headlines at the beginning of the show very quickly, and I've slipped back into old habits. Discipline. Right, let's pick it back up. So, Daily Star. Royal cover-up. Please censor Jimmy Savile interview transcript. Then moving on to an article from The Guardian. Email shed new light on UK link to CIA torture flights. That's from The Guardian. The Independent has the article, Royal Family Granted New Right of Secrecy. I wonder if that had anything to do with the article 2 ago. Look, I'm already breaking off. Right, discipline. Right, brother of child abuse inquiry judge Elizabeth Butler-Sloss was accused of cover-up. And then, that was the last show that we really, the last sort of recordings that we did. I remember chatting to Tony Marie about it. And he was saying, look, this stinks. And sure enough, only about a week or so after we've done those recordings, it turns out the following article. There was the article that I covered. Baronet Butler-Sloss says she will not quit paedophile inquiry, and then we've got an article from the Telegraph, which is dated on the 14th of July. Baroness Butler-Sloss quits paedophile inquiry. There you go. In years gone by, they used to be able to get away with stuff like that. Having what you would call, someone whose brother was mixing in those circles of those that are having the finger pointed at them. I think that's a fair thing to say. Common sense says, don't pick someone who's related to someone who mixes in the circles of those who are having the fingers pointed at them. I mean, it's just a common sense idea. But in years gone by, I mean, you look at some of the investigations in a variety of things that I would say have been covered up, and a variety of subjects across the board, and they do usually get their guys or girls, in this case, on in the driving seat of the inquiry, and to be able to boot her out, or be able to put enough pressure on her to want to quit within a week is a magnificent accomplishment to how far we've come as free people in Britain, being able to spread that truth over a free internet and being able to organise, mobilise and achieve our goals. And that's mirrored what we did with the financial system. So by people like you listening to shows like this, of course, this is a very, very small piece of the puzzle. I mean, very small. But by having lots of and more of people like me bitching, moaning, complaining, but in a truthful way about the problems and the potential solutions by keeping it positive and upbeat and saying, look, there's some problems, but there's solutions as well, because a number of people say, oh, that's the way of the world, you can't change anything. Yes, you can, and here's an example of it. So by more and more people speaking out like I do, more and more people like yourself listening to people like me speak out, and then they speak out and tell others, and those others tell others, and it's all from credible sources, and people think, actually, no, this is not a good idea, and they get things done. And what used to take years is now taking days. Where more and more people are waking up to the fact that something stinks in the way this country is run in a very serious and organised way. And they're not just incompetent. And so thank you to my listeners. Thank you to those that listen and then tell others and critically say to others, hey, don't take my word for it. Go at beyondthenews.co.uk, click on the news tab, and look on the article for yourself. Baroness Butler-Sloss quits paedophile inquiry, and the evidence that we presented beforehand. And that, the other articles that we'd had leads to this headline, Baroness Butler-Sloss quits paedophile inquiry. So, congratulations, power to the people. Then we've got an example of what can be done peacefully and lawfully through research and communications. So, to carry on that theme, the allegations of the VIP paedophile plot further shred respect for key institutions. That's The Guardian. Then we've got Princess Diana's former bodyguard jailed for abusing child, from The Express. Then we've got from The Telegraph, Tories discuss stripping benefits claimants who refuse treatment for depression. Then we've got UK firefighters begin 8-day strike over reforms. That's a video. And BBC biased coverage of Gaza slammed, another video. So, and which will bring us then into our guest, Mr. Christian Riley. So let's begin with time bomb at Elm Guesthouse. Pop stars, a bishop, top. I read the headline earlier. Blah blah blah. Peter Hatton Borshin killed himself 6 days after his 28th birthday. He had taken an overdose of codeine and choked to death. The tragic end to a tragic life is how the coroner summed up the stark facts presented to the inquest. And who at the time would disagree? Peter was only a baby when his father died in an accident. He was orphaned at 13 when his mother threw herself in front of a train. His stepfather then handed Peter and his older brother to social services. And that is how Peter ended up at Grafton Close Children's Home, which was run by Richmond Borough Council in southwest London. Truly, he was a lost soul. When his life finally came to an end in a Kingston-on-Thames bedsit, he left a note which explained that he feared he would be unable to control his violent fantasies against women if he remained alive. So, 18 years, and it goes on to say other things in his note. So, 18 years after his death, the police are, for time constraints, I'll just skip them. 18 years after his death, not wishing to be insensitive, but let's get to the bits that bring in the establishment. 18 years after his death, the police are again looking at the Peter Hatton Borshin case as part of a wider investigation launched last month into allegations that in the early 80s, a paedophile ring of VIPs preyed on boys from Grafton Close Children's Home. If the historic allegations at the heart of Operation Fernbridge are proved, they would represent one of the more sensational and disturbing establishment sex scandals of the modern era. Long-existing allegations of a cover-up would again have to be aired. During a police raid on a property in Central Elm Guesthouse, detectives seized a list of names of high-profile alleged visitors to Elm Guesthouse in Barnes, southwest London, a gay-friendly establishment and one where underage rent boys and children from the Grafton Close home were reportedly brought to have sex with adult men. By the way, like I said, I'm not anti-gay in any way. I am anti-paedophile, but that has nothing to do with sexual orientation, so don't think that I'm going off on one on the gay community. All the gay people I know are wonderful people. But, I just wanted to clear that because haters love to hate, don't they? And people, if you're saying something bad that's happened and mentioning a community that is part of that, they think you're tarnishing the whole community. It's not. I'm just reading the article out. So the list includes a number of senior MPs, high-ranking policemen, leading tycoon, figures from the National Front and Sinn Féin, an official of the royal household, an MI5 officer, 2 pop stars, and the traitorous Soviet spy Anthony Blunt. Cyril Smith, the late Liberal MP for Rochdale, who has already been named as a regular at the guest house where he allegedly met teenage rent boys when the homosexual age of consent was 21. So, my point is, that was published on the 2nd of February 2013. And it was only this summer that this whole paedophile thing really blew up, wasn't it? So, that is an example of the news filtering, as I was saying before. It comes out, it's truth, people go, it's a conspiracy theory, then you go, no, here's an article from the Mail Online. Oh, blimey, and it circulates around it. And people complain and people moan, and the people involved think, keep covering it up, because, this was from the 1980s. And you listen to the list of names that I just, the list of types of people that I just read out. And you tell me that it's a coincidence that this stuff takes years to come out when you have got, let's go back to reading that list, was it MPs, police officers, what can I say? So that is an example of how old news can become new news, because people say, no, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is a very real problem. So that's all. I want to show how that sort of news cycle is beginning to sort of come that way. UK's lowest paid employees to be classed as not working enough. 1 million people could be pushed to earn more or have their benefits cut, says Department for Work and Pensions. The Guardian, Saturday, the 7th of September 2013. 1 million of Britain's lowest paid employees will be classed as not working enough and could find themselves pushed with the threat of sanctions to find more income under radical changes to benefits, the Department for Work and Pensions has said. DWP internal documents seen by The Guardian reveal that people earning between £330 and around £950 a month, just under the rate of national minimum wage for a 35-hour week, could be mandated to attend job seeker meetings where their working habits will be examined as part of the Universal Credit Programme. Though some of those who are deemed to be not working enough could also be instructed to take on extra training. If they fail to complete tasks, they could be stripped of their UC benefits in a move which departmental insiders conceded is controversial. So, I think people should have a work ethic. I think people should work, but I really don't like the idea of our public servants really, being judges of people's lifestyles and acting like they're the masters. No, you are servants, okay? Remember that. And I think they will remember that before the end of the decade. Now, I've already covered a great deal of my thinking on this, so I'll just read out the article. This is from The Independent, and this is from Monday, the 14th of July. Scientists reveal how THC found in cannabis could slow cancer tumour growth. Scientists at a British university have made a major breakthrough in revealing how cannabis could be used as a treatment to prevent the growth of cancer. Like I said, there was a great deal of other universities around the world that had done some research way before Monday the 14th of July 2014. Research carried out by a team from the University of East Anglia has shed light on the still poorly understood theory that an ingredient in that an ingredient in marijuana has anti-cancer properties. There have been long reports that the main psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, tetrahydrocannabinol, and I may have pronounced that wrong, or THC, has been shown to have success in combating the growth of cancerous cells. But Cancer Research UK says we need more research before we will know whether the substance can really help treating the disease. I suggest you go over to those places in America and talk to some of the people over there. If you're bleeding, look for a man with scars. So if you want to know how to cure cancer, look for someone who's claimed to cure it, and let's see if it's real. Let's see if what they're saying is legit. The new study published in the Journal of Biological Chemistry could be a big boost for attempts to create a synthetic substitute for cannabis that can fight cancer in a targeted and safe way. Dr. Peter McCormack from UEA's School of Pharmacy said, "Our findings help explain some of the well-known but still poorly understood effects of how THC at low and high doses on tumour growth." Helps explain some of the well-known but still poorly understood effects of THC at low and high doses on tumour growth. Well known. Interesting. I would imagine if you were to speak to a number of people who have been to their doctor's surgeries and had the misfortune of being diagnosed with cancer, and we have every sympathy for those that have, I wonder how many of those would think their doctor was well known, that there was an alternative treatment to the ones that the pharmaceutical industries have been pushing. I wonder how well known it is to them. And so it's interesting, his statement, is it not? There has been a great deal of interest in understanding the molecular mechanisms behind how marijuana, and specifically THC, influence cancer pathology. By identifying the receptors involved, we have provided an important step towards the future development of therapeutics that can take advantage of the interactions we have discovered to reduce tumour growth. Dr. McCormack nonetheless insisted that studies like this should not encourage cancer patients to self-medicate, and nor would I. I'm advocating that this stuff really needs to be researched a great deal more, and I'm also advocating the fact that the pharmaceutical industries may not wish to do so, because effectively then they're researching into a product that people could grow themselves, or albeit illegally, they could still do it or get hold of it outside of basically people could find a cure. They could be researching into something that will not make them money. And I put it to you, and in fact it wouldn't only not just make them money, it would cost them billions, because cancer treatments that they currently have as the alternatives to this are very expensive, and or at least they charge a lot for them. Yeah, I think one figure, I think just off the top of my head, cancer was worth about 160 billion a year worldwide. Now you could eliminate that with some water, some fertilizer, and some sunshine, and some seeds. I don't think you're going to see a lot of pharmaceutical industries jump on the bandwagon unless they can find a way to really control it. And I put it to you that pharmaceutical industries may be more interested in customers than cures. So, moving on. Royal cover-up, police censor Jimmy Savile interview script. Now, this was 20th of October 2013. So again, we're seeing police involved in, well, let's read that headline again. Royal cover-up. Police censor Jimmy Savile interview transcript. How many people knew that? Paedophile Jimmy Savile named the royal family in his bombshell interview with police, but any mention of them was removed from the released transcripts. Oh, that's from the Daily Star. 20th of October 2013. Oh, really? By Jonathan Cork. The papers from a 2009 police quiz were released last week following a 7-month battle by the Daily Star Sunday. But the 26 pages, which exposed the evil pervert as a bully and a liar, came with 96 redactions. That's crossings out, it's pointed out in the article. Today we can reveal the documents had been vetted by Buckingham Palace, and that the serial sex attacker's royal connections were removed. So right there you've got to ask yourself, how would the royal family know that they would want to vet them? Would you want to vet something you had no idea about? And then would you want to make 96 redactions? Well, actually, to be accurate, 96 redactions were made after the vetting. It doesn't go on to say that they necessarily did them, but I think we can put two and two together here, can we not? We can assume We can make a logical deduction, can we not? One reference Savile made about a cousin of the Queen was included in an internal police report released in January. But on Tuesday, when Surrey Police published the interview transcripts, there was no mention of her. Other references to royalty were also seemingly erased, and during our fight to obtain the records, police let slip Buckingham Palace's involvement. Tony Smith, the Force's Information Access Manager, made the references. He explained why it was taking so long to release the documents. He told us that, as well as going to a senior police chief outside the Force, the papers had gone to Buckingham Palace to consider because they are mentioned in it. There is no mention of Buckingham Palace or anyone from the royal family in the edited scripts. Oh, after those redactions. Oh. I wonder, it goes back to all men and women created equal, are they? Really? There's a monarchy for you. And Savile, given an OBE by the Queen in 1972, followed by a knighthood in 1990, was someone who liked to name drop his royal connections. We've covered that on the show before. The presenter, who died in 2011, aged 84, 2 years after Surrey's bungled probe into sex abuse claims, often boasted of his friendship with Prince Charles. He was also a confidant of Princess Diana and claimed to have helped the Duchess of York as her marriage to Prince Andrew fell apart. Crucially, in his 1974 autobiography, Savile boasted of his friendship with the same cousin of the Queen he mentioned in the 2009 police interview. Under caution, he told officers the first time he visited a Surrey school where he was said to have abused girls was the Princess Alexandra for a garden party. If detectives had investigated that reference by looking at his memoirs, they would have discovered that he was someone who preyed on vulnerable young girls. He wrote, "Princess Alex is a patron of a hostel for girls in care. At this place, I'm a cross between a term-time boyfriend and a fixer of special trips out." The 76-year-old widow of Sir Angus Ogilvie is the Duke of Kent's sister and a granddaughter of King George V. Our investigation suggests Savile's mentions of the princess are among 10 lines of blacked-out text from pages 5 to 6 of the transcripts. The revelation is likely to spark further criticism of Surrey Police's 29th month Savile investigation, which resulted in a prolific paedophile never facing justice. But it also raises questions as to whether the Force took out the reference to Princess Alexandra to avoid further embarrassment, or whether the royals insisted it be excluded. We have been told that 19 of 32 redactions made to Savile's answers were on the grounds they contained personal information. One answer given by Savile had around 10 lines of text blacked out for that reason. The other 13 redactions were made because they contained information sensitive to criminal investigations, and 64 redactions were made to comments or questions from the 2 female detectives who quizzed Savile over allegations from 3 women. Surrey Police has said its decision to release the edited papers was made following extensive consultation, which included speaking to the victims and the Association of Chief Police Officers. It made no mention of consulting Buckingham Palace. The Daily Star Sunday has asked the Information Commissioner's Office to investigate the redactions and consider the arguments any outside bodies made. Remember, I believe it's the Royal Courts of Justice, is it? These things are investigated under? I think I'm right in that, isn't it? Just to, what can you say? What can you say? They'll be investigated by. Basically, everyone swears an oath to the royal family, doesn't they? In public service, I think maybe I've never done it, but I think that's kind of the thing. And then it's the Royal Courts of Justice. So, really, people of Britain, you only really want to give power to an authority like that is 100% kosher, don't you? In fact, I would advocate never doing it in the first place. But, I mean, if you've got a system that overlooks all the other sort of systems, you want to make certain that system, the overseer is beyond reproach, don't you? Otherwise, you're going to have a cover-up of a conspiracy. Just sowing some seeds here. I think this is something that will. I think this is a broadcast that will be poignant in other people's minds before the end of the decade. I don't think this story will end here, and dovetail that into the other stories about VIP paedophile networks as well. So, as we've already made, the government papers showing links between Savile and Prince Charles, 64, were redacted. An extract from the files relating to Margaret Thatcher's dealings with Savile was blacked out by the Cabinet Office to hide his claim that Charles had agreed to be a patron of one of his charities. It was reinstated after an appeal by the Daily Star Sunday. A palace spokesman said, "We could not comment on police or freedom of information matters." So, Guardian, email shed new light on UK link to CIA torture flights. Police given crucial logs about Diego Garcia's role in rendition programme when it was allegedly used as a secret prison. That was Saturday, 12th of July. Crucial logs revealing flights to a British overseas territory when it was allegedly used as a secret US prison are in the possession of the police, the Observer has learned. The revelation has raised concerns about why, despite repeated demands, details of the flights have not been shared with lawyers and MPs who for years have been investigating the role played by Diego Garcia, an atoll in the Indian Ocean, in the CIA's extraordinary rendition programme. So, this is a clear example of how innocent until proven guilty is very important in a civilised society, and if anyone breaks that, they must be accountable, and those people accountable must be accountable to the people to whom are supposed to be protected under the habeas corpus rights of show me the corpse, innocent still proven guilty. So there you go. And all our governments always go and try and say we must bring democracy to these other countries. What a joke. Moving on, this probably dovetails into the last story that we had before then from The Independent, and this is Saturday 8th of July 2011. Do you think they saw it coming? Royal family granted new right of secrecy. Yeah, that's right, the cornerstone of any nutritious democracy. The royal family is to be granted absolute protection from public scrutiny in a controversial legal reform designed to draw a veil of secrecy over the affairs of Queen, Prince Charles and Prince William. That sounds healthy. That sounds fair. That sounds nice. Oh, that doesn't sound dodgy at all, does it? Letters, emails and documents relating to the monarch, her heir and the second in line. See, this is an example, again, of how 2 years later something can become topical. So this is from January 2011. So, and then you have the article that I read out beforehand that comes 2 years later. Connected? I wonder. Sweeping changes to the Freedom of Information Act will reverse advances which had briefly shone a light on the royal finances, including an attempt by the Queen to use a state poverty fund to heat Buckingham Palace, and which had threatened to force the disclosure of Prince of Wales' prolific correspondence with ministers. So there you go. So that, the secrecy comes in, and then they can use it to redact things when Jimmy Savile talks about them, can't they? There you go. But you look about when inquiries, stuff like that. You can see how the timescale plans out. I've got no doubt it's probably beneficial for them to help cover up some of the gaffes that they make. But I mean, I really think this is all about what we saw in 2 articles ago, don't you? The government buried the plan for added protection for the royal family in the small print of plans called "Opening Up Public Bodies to Public Scrutiny." You've got to love how they do it. We're going to release it, and that's how the press does it, doesn't it? The royal family have released a document saying, we'd love to print plans called "Opening Up Public Bodies to Public Scrutiny," in which we're going to close public scrutiny to public bodies. It's just we're coming to the point where you really need to. It's just nonsense what a lot of the higher ups, be they politicians, royal family, it is nonsense now. And there are enough people that are starting to wake up to this nonsense and feel angry enough to do something peacefully and lawfully about it. So, yeah, makes me sick. So, brother of child abuse inquiry Judge Elizabeth Butler-Sloss was accused of cover-up. We went into that on previous shows. It just brings nicely onto a bit of good news of Baroness Sloss quits paedophile inquiry, July the 14th. Retired judge steps down as head of major inquiry into historic sex abuse allegations less than a week after she was appointed by Theresa May, the Home Secretary. Here's an interesting thing here. Downing Street said that it was her decision to stand down, but insisted that the Prime Minister still believes she was the right person to head up the inquiry. Well, that tells me everything I need to know, does it not? I'll just read that again. Even after she stood down, Downing Street said that it was her decision to stand down, but insisted that the Prime Minister still believes she was the right person to head up the inquiry. Really? What are you trying to achieve if you think she is the right person to head up that inquiry? There's a question for you, isn't it? What are they trying to achieve? So, this is Sunday 13th of July. The allegations of the VIP paedophile plot further shred respect for key institutions. We cannot make meaningful political choices if we trust no one. That's Andrew Rawnsley, The Observer. It is the question of our age, arguably the question of our... It is a question of our age, arguably the question of our age, which links every story that is probably interesting you right now. It screams out that the allegations of the paedophile ring operated at Westminster. It is triggered again by the government's desire to rush through emergency surveillance legislation in the name of combating terrorism. Yes! It's all about the terrorists that the Western society continually arm and have great links to. And then we've proved that on the show before, the links the West funds and aids Al-Qaeda, and then we'll just rename them ISIS, shall we, when people figure that out, and we'll go through it all again, and look all the people that we finance and armed. Look, we need to bring in laws to do that. It gets a bit obvious now, doesn't it? It really does. There are people that would never listen to this show or listen to anything like it that know this is a scam, man. And don't worry about all the paedophiles hurting and killing kids. No, worry about the people that we armed and funded and have a great deal of connections to over the years. It's like I said, there gets a point where even people who really didn't believe conspiracy theories can see, hang on, this ain't right, man. And then The Express. Princess Diana's former bodyguard jailed for abusing child. A former Royal Marine who worked as a bodyguard for Princess Diana and her honeymoon has been jailed for abusing a child. That's Friday, July 11th, 2014. The Telegraph. Tories discuss stripping benefits claimants who refuse treatment for depression. Senior ministers believe the rules should be reviewed in order to reduce the huge numbers of people who are declared unfit for work due to mental health problems. I'm all about mental health people getting real help. But I'll tell you what, if you go and speak to most of the mental health professionals, they'll say, we could probably do with a bit more funding, please. So, if you're going to crack the whip on people to come see us, we're already sort of quite stretched as it is. So maybe you want to give them a bit more cash. You could take it away from the civil list, couldn't you? All these people that were redacted and redacted from Jimmy Savile's texts. I mean, you could take the money from some of those guys, couldn't you? Or the banks, who we then give, the banks who could create money out of nothing, we have to give them ours. Hundreds of thousands of benefit claimants face being stripped of their state allowances if they refuse to undergo treatment for anxiety and depression under radical plans drawn up by ministers. I wonder what that treatment is. I wonder if I'll scroll down the article. Does it say? Because if that treatment is purely pharmaceutical, then that's a benefit for the pharmaceutical industry, isn't it? That's how another example of how government could increase the pharmaceutical industry's profits. So, let's move on to our videos, which seem to have crashed since I previously loaded them. Let's see if we can bring them up now. UK firefighters begin 8-day strike over reforms, and this is from Press TV. And when was this published? Tuesday, July 15th.
Firefighters in England and Wales have been taking strike action since Monday in an ongoing row with the government over proposed reforms to the fire service. Members of the Fire Brigades Union are angry that they are being asked to work longer and see changes to their pensions. Anina Taylor explains out of London.
Fire chiefs in England and Wales are urging the public to be extra vigilant as members of the Fire Brigades Union stage walkouts at planned periods over 8 consecutive days. As fresh waves of strikes begin on Monday, FBU bosses said the government must realise firefighters cannot accept proposals that would have such devastating consequences for the fire service and its members. The strikes will run from July the 14th to July 21st. Fire Minister Brandon Lewis say firefighters will have one of the best pensions in the public sector. But for those who've decided to take industrial action, the issue is more than that of pay. It's about the way in which proposed government reforms will impact the fire service, and not just for firefighters, but for members of the public. Members of the local West London community were overwhelmingly in support of their striking firefighters, despite the added risk.
That is a concern, but they do have their rights at the end of the day. But I do know that if there was a big emergency, they're open for that. So they're exercising their rights. So I don't think there's any harm in that.
Of course, we have to support them because they fight for their life and for our life as well. So, of course, we have to support if there's some decision is in favor of them.
We will do our best to support them for sure because they are the most important body of the community, so we must support them.
So I wanted to point out there that governments always say, it's all about they want more money. Well, no, actually, if you listen to these people, it's often about the fact that they want their deals honoured on their pensions. I mean, do you want to do business with people who cheat you? Yeah? And not only that, but is that going to draw the best talents into the future generations of people who think, do I want to do a deal with the government who's going to stab me in the back? And secondly, it's about the quality of service they're delivering. They're saying, hang on, we can't deliver a good quality of service. And hang on, we understand it will be blamed on us. You know, when we don't have the funding to get to somewhere in time or do the quality of job, we're going to be the ones that criticised, not the MP who signed off on the cuts being made 2 years ago, waiting for this sort of thing to inevitably happen. So, do not believe the mainstream media is always, they want more money. I don't know, sometimes maybe it is, but from what I speak to these people, it's about having their deals honoured and their services that they want to deliver to us maintained. Not about more money. So I just wanted to make that point.
Have marched on the BBC's Scotland headquarters to protest against what they call the broadcaster's biased coverage of Israel's offensive on Gaza.
So, the point I wanted to make there was mainstream media is not as reliable or accurate as you might think it was. I'm not taking sides in that conflict. I'm saying that BBC biased coverage of Gaza slammed. So I'm not saying Gaza's right. I'm saying the BBC's accused of biased coverage. That is the point I'm trying to make. So, without further ado, let's give Christian Riley a call, shall we? Let's give him a buzz and see if he's on the other end of the line. I want to talk about the money situation. Always nervous for the listeners, isn't it? Do they answer? It's just me on my own doing the show.
Hello.
Christian, Jim Grant, we're doing...
Right, man.
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. We're recording the show. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you totally okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine, my friend. Well, it's been months that we've tried to find a time where our scheduling is coming on and we can chat to each other.
I'm a bit confounded surrounded by technology.
Yeah.
Months as well.
Not only that, but you're a very busy man. I understand you've just come back from Edinburgh. Did you have a good Edinburgh Festival, my friend?
I had an amazing Edinburgh Festival. Last 3 years, Edinburgh for me has been amazing.
Excellent.
The Free Fringe has really turned it on its head. It's really good now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so pleased. Good sell-out runs up there?
Well, yeah, just full rooms every day, and proper fringe goers, people looking for new experiences, coming to see. It's what it's about, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Marvellous stuff. I wanted to get you in on March, because there was that wonderful article from March that basically, in The Guardian, it admitted that you and I's theory on monetary supply was accurate.
Yeah.
And it was such a massive admission, wasn't it? Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I mean, it's a constant source of frustration to me, and it probably is to you as well, that you can't just say, people just won't have it. They will not have it, even in light of this article. The article, I believe, is entitled something like "The Game is Up. Money is a government IOU."
I've got the article in front of me.
What's it called again?
The truth is out.
Yeah.
Money is just an IOU, and the banks are rolling in it. And that's David Graeber, Tuesday, 18th of March. That's from the London Guardian.
I just can't believe. I can't believe things didn't change more. Of course, I can believe things didn't change more after it. I mean, it's not even a. Well, it's going to take historians and all kinds of expert testimony to find out this thing. It's a thought experiment. Money's not backed by gold anymore. Nobody has to hold a certain amount of gold to have a certain amount of money, especially governments. Governments create it out of thin air. I mean, I had they create it out of thin air by creating jobs. Government checks don't bounce. When they want to pay a teacher, they change the numbers up on a computer, and it goes into a teacher's bank account. The same, ditto a nurse, ditto a private contractor like Halliburton or something like that. The money comes from nowhere, and we knew that in when was the bank bailout? 2008.
Yeah.
Ben Bernanke said, it was asked point blank on primetime television, "Is this taxpayers' money that we're spending here?" This was the bank bailout, and he replied, "No, we just used the computer at the Fed to mark up the numbers on the bank's computers."
And then we lended at interest.
But the point is that it was said that there and then on prime time in 2008, and it just went in one ear and out of the other, because people don't want to believe it. They just don't want to believe it. It's like saying, it's like when everybody thought the world was flat. And you would go, no, it really is round. It has to be round. People just don't want to believe it. I mean, what can you do?
It has.
You're doing a great job, Jim. I think we're using every atom of attention that we can get from people. Because time is, given the nature of life and matter, time, consciousness, it's finite, of time existing like this. So people have limited attention, and, so we have to try and do what we can to get that attention, and in a way that's engaging as well, because there's no point just getting somebody's attention by being outrageous or something like that. You've actually got to get them interested in it. And that's the amazing thing about this. I'm going to call it modern monetary theory, but it's not a great name, but it seems to be the name that's sticking.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that money is a government IOU. I'm just amazed. At the root of everything. Why do we work? Why? Because we need money. Well, if we need to eat, why do we need money? Why don't we go for food? Or, if we need a house to live in, why don't we buy building materials? Sorry, why don't we acquire building materials and build a house? Why do we always need money? And when you start trying to answer that question and unpack it, you start unraveling this trail and you realize that, money is a pure tool of coercion, that's controlled by big powers. Always has been. It's never been any other way. That big power could be a monarchy. It could be a church. It could be a temple. It could be, but in the age that we're living in, it's governments and the corporations that are funding those governments. That's the tail wagging the dog, isn't it? The corporations are bigger constituents of the government actors than we are as individuals.
Yeah.
I think that's fairer to say, maybe.
I wanted to talk about the ramifications of that admission,
Yeah.
given, but I also wanted to make out this statement just to back you up on what you said. This is from the article. Last week, something remarkable happened. The Bank of England let the cat out of the bag. In a paper called Money Creation in the Modern Economy, co-authored by 3 economists from the bank's Monetary and Analysis Directorate, they stated outright that most common assumptions of how banking works are simply wrong, and that the kind of populist positions more ordinarily associated with groups such as Occupy Wall Street are correct. In doing so, they have effectively thrown out the entire theoretical basis for austerity out of the window, because, Christian, money is now life in some certain regards. If you speak to someone who's had cancer treatment declined because there isn't enough money in the system in their particular postcode, if you speak to someone who's had to have their local hospital ward closed down because of money, if you speak to any person in the mental health ward that's had parts of their budget cut, and then certain people have slipped through the system and ended up murdering someone else, we're now into a realm where money is life. And that our governments are telling us there isn't enough money, and as a result, some people need to die. And yet, this clearly is not the case. Would you like to testify to that?
It's just, you're right. If I sound like I'm laughing, obviously I'm not. I'm exasperated.
Yeah.
Literally people have died and people will die because not enough people understand this very basic thing, this very simple thing, that money is created out of thin air by governments. That's it. End of story. Let's say you're listening now and you're skeptical. Well, why not what would it? Let's think it through. What would be what would be the downside to believing what I'm saying, even though you can't figure it through to first principles? Want to act as if it's true and see where we get. I just think, what if we create a better world by government spending, just accidentally. Let's give that a go, shall we? But if you think it through, the money that charities are trying to raise for cancer treatment. Think it through. What are the implications of it? By not spending that money, by not leading the world in creating that money for that research, people are dying. It's the more it sinks in, the more barbaric it is. And there are people out there who I guess they're going to call themselves economists, who either don't know it because they are not very good at their field, in which case that's bad. But my theory is they do know it, and they, their whole, a lot of other assumptions, a lot of other things that they're invested in fall apart if they allow themselves to work as if modern monetary theory is correct.
Absolutely. Christian, just coming up to this end of the broadcast, you know that I usually do it by hour, so can you stay on the line, and I'll close down this show, but come back on. And I really want to talk about, when we come back, about, trying to get this through an idea to people, what we're talking about here and the importance of it, and how it really does point out that the whole austerity system is a charade, and anything else that you really want to talk about and sort of get through to people. So hold on the line. I'll just say thank you very much for listening to this broadcast. It's rebroadcast at beyondthenews.co.uk. Coming up on our next broadcast, which will be next week's broadcast, which I'm recording obviously in about 2 minutes' time, will be the conclusion of our interview with Christian Riley, and I'll also bring up some other stuff of basically how we're being conned and scammed in this country. So thank you very much for listening. This has been Beyond the News. Thank you ever so much, and thanks for listening.